speech. Let's talk more about free speech, and particularly that of our pop stars. Howard Donald. I'm rather a big fan of Howard Donald because I know for a fact he's someone who's rather a fan of sensible free speech, and he's spoken out in the past about this. Well, now he's got into trouble simply for liking some tweets on Twitter, which apparently were transphobic. They weren't transphobic. But let's talk about this with Ben Jones, who's the Outreach Director at the Free Speech Union. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. I'm always amazed when some of the even supposedly more sensible newspapers will say headlines like, "Take that star Howard is axed from Pride event for liking, quote, transphobic tweets." He liked, this is the thing, if you're not on social media, and very sensible you are too, just basically pressing like is supposed to show you're interested in a tweet, you're agreeing with a tweet. Personally, I use it as a filing mechanism. I like tweets that, I'll come back to that later, I'll be able to find it in my queue of tweets as opposed to the many other thousands that I see. It's claimed that these were derogatory to gay and trans people, and so he was told, after these were highlighted by some people who've got no lives whatsoever, that his solo services were no longer required by Groovebox's Nottingham Pride Festival this weekend after his controversial Twitter activities emerged. He'd like to tweet that stated transitioning children is profound abuse, and one stating that no woman has a penis. He also liked a post demanding that Disney be defunded, and apparently this is over a gay men's chorus in Los Angeles. Not entirely sure that any of this is transphobic. I'm not entirely sure why that means he should lose work at a festival. What's going on?
Well, here we go again. So much, I have to say, of the media coverage around this has been, as you've described, it's been incredibly frustrating, where you get a headline like such and such a person has said something that's transphobic or discriminatory or Islamophobic or racist or whatever it might be, and then you never, or very, very rarely, get the substance of what they're actually accused of saying. And so you can't judge for yourself whether it is transphobic or whatever it is they've been accused of. And so there's just this sort of taint, this miasma of guilt of being morally unhygienic that attaches itself to somebody, and you're never actually able to get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? And again, I really think the media need to stop reporting these things as controversial or transphobic. Nowadays, when I hear about anyone being axed or something because of being particularly it's always transphobic or racist, I always say, tell me what they said, or a tasteless joke. Tell me what they... I don't bleep it out. I want to know what they actually said or wrote or did. This isn't even stuff he's written. And even if he had written it, I don't see what that's got to do with him performing at a Pride festival. Again, these are mainstream views for most people. Is it the case that you can only appear at a certain festival if you have certain views? Because that seems to be the case now.
Well, I think that's the position that Pride certainly has got itself into, where there's this sort of word salad of LGBTQIA+ people. It doesn't seem to me at all necessary that all of those people in that umbrella group should all agree with each other about very much at all.
I'm not sure what they've got in common. I don't know what anyone in the plus or the QIA, or I'm not even sure why the T goes with the LGB. I think that actually, in a lot of cases, the trans in the LGBT is actually perhaps not in the best interest, certainly, of the lesbians. We see this with, this idea that, if you're a lesbian, you should be willing to date a woman with a penis. I'm not sure that's what most lesbians are looking for.
Well, I dare say that most gay, or certainly very many gay men and lesbian women, would have the common sense to realise that men cannot menstruate, which is one of the other tweets that he's apparently accused of liking.
Listen, you're never going to be able to appear at a Pride festival now.
I've given up hope already, Julia. I'm happy speaking to you.
But this is the thing. These are really, these are just really mainstream views. The fact that they're even described as controversial, let alone as, quote, transphobic, is quite extraordinary, isn't it? Now, this is cancel culture. This is at its worst. People literally, I'm sure he doesn't need the work. I imagine he's probably got a few million in the bank over the years. But nevertheless, he's now deleted his Twitter account. And again, he's being censored. He's being shut down from not even writing anything, just liking a tweet. Now, is it cancel culture when people try and organise, as I have helped to do, a boycott of people who are saying things that I don't agree with? I want to know your thoughts on this, because the DIY giant Wix is facing a boycott campaign. Boycott Wix was trending over the weekend, and a falling share price, fallen by more than 4% already, after a boss at Wix, a very senior boss, the chief operating officer, this is Fraser Longdon. He took part in an online trans summit hosted by Pink News and sponsored by EY, the accountants. It's actually from quite some time ago, but it hadn't been publicised. But James Esses, a psychotherapist who we spoke to a little bit earlier on the show, he sat through for his sins 7 hours of this to see what people were saying, and he said some extraordinary things. He said he talked about how majority of people in this country were sort of slightly ignorant but mostly kind, but he was never going to change some of the bigots' minds. But he did say the other 10%, they're just hot air, and they'll go and buy a tin of paint to the nearest place to them. They might have been to us before, it might not be us afterwards. And equally, if they do come in and buy a tin of paint and behave that way, they're not welcome in our stores anyway. He basically said, anyone who thinks that trans women are women as opposed to men are basically transphobes, and he doesn't want their business. Is it reasonable then for people like me to say, well then, I shall not give you my business and I shall encourage others not to?
Yes, I think so. I mean, it's out and out discrimination. You're not allowed to do that against somebody for their religious beliefs, quite rightly. You're not allowed to do it against somebody for their philosophical beliefs. So if, like the vast majority of the British public, you think that you cannot change your sex or that women's spaces should be protected over and above the claims of trans people to want to access those spaces, that's a completely legitimate view that's protected by law. So I think it's outrageous what he said. I did see as well that he said that he can never win the argument on these points because people are so bigoted. That's not the reason he's never going to win the argument. He's not going to win the argument because it's daft. He can't make it very well. And because if you behave in this incendiary way towards a plurality, a majority of the population even, it's going to backfire. So I think people are well within their rights to say, well, no, if you think we're bigoted because we have these reasonable mainstream views, we're not going to go into your shop. I
mean, and that's the thing, isn't it? We do have a choice of where we want to buy a ladder or a drill or any DIY goods, and we do have a choice, and people are making those choices, and it is absolutely fascinating that people really are saying, up with this, we will not put. You can hold your views whatever you want, and I'll hold mine, but you don't get to lecture me because I want to buy something from your store. And what I don't understand is, why do so many executives at these major retailers, whether it's, people who own Bud Light, whether it's Nike, whoever it is, why Sainsbury's? I mean, Waitrose were pushing a pride flag bag at me last week. It's like, why do they think that we want to be lectured about their views on these social issues? We just want to go and buy stuff from them.
I think people are quickly tiring of this incessant woke hectoring, and I think big business is being very slow to catch up to the fact that actually the vast majority of the British public are extremely tolerant. Particularly in the last 20 years, attitudes have changed remarkably, and for the good. But there's still, despite the massive decrease in homophobia or transphobia, if we're going to use that term, there's been this sort of ramping up of the rhetoric about stamping out homophobia and transphobia, even as the supply of those phobias dwindles.
Absolutely. Ben Jones, Outreach Director at Free Speech Union, thank you so much for joining us.